Hi, everybody. Welcome to the YouTube video for week 11. That means we have about 6 weeks left. And for most, if not all of you, this is your first semester. I guess you're probably feeling the pressure that we all do near the end of the semester. Hang in there, work hard. You're gonna make it. I want to encourage you. And in this video today, I want to go over some notes that I made while I was marking your first drafts of your argumentative essay. I just scribbled some notes as I was marking. And, I want to go over some issue. We're using the word issues in another way in this assignment, aren't we? But issues with your essays, common issues that occurred in more than one essay. All right, I want to start with direct quotes. As I said, you should use, and I encourage you to use, evidence from both essays in your essay. But I also remember saying several times, and perhaps I should have put it in writing, but maybe after this I will. But I said, no, I don't allow block quotes in this class. And what do I mean by that? In MLA, if you directly quote more than 4 lines from a source, you need to format it as a block quote, and you need to set it off from the text and indent it. So 4 lines or more. So what does that mean? I'm going to establish a rule here, and I made notes on, if you had a quote longer than 4 lines in your essay, I made a note, attached a comment to your graded first draft. You should not use more than 4 lines from a source in one direct quote. Okay, I'm establishing that rule because if you go over that, then you have to use a block quote. I don't allow block quotes. All right, so shorten up some of those quotes. I've read both of these essays several times over, and I know the reading audience is students at another university who have not read the essays, but you don't need to quote extensively from these essays in order for them to understand what you're writing about. Okay, so again, I want you to cite evidence, I want you to quote, but just reasonable length quotes. I'd like a sentence or 2 for any given quote, but I'm going to establish a limit of 4 lines for each direct quote, right? Because, as I said, if you go over that, then it becomes a block quote. No block quotes. All right. So let's move on to another issues. Okay. Well, titles. First of all, some of you did not use a title, and you need to use you need to create a title for your essay, something that grabs attention and that describes what you will be discussing in your essay. And then there were some issues, a few of you, with proper capitalization of your title. So, you know what? We're going to finish that exercise that we started last week, this coming Thursday. So that'll give you some additional practice with properly capitalizing titles. Okay. All right, let's get on to some heavier stuff here. The thesis statements. Some of the thesis statements were good. A lot of them, you need to make it clearer. Almost all of you stated, I guess maybe all of you stated your position clearly. Whether you think life overall for African Americans is improved, worsened, the same when comparing 1963 to today. But you need to make clearer that you're basing that that position on the evidence from the Baldwin and Alexander essays, and that you're using evidence regarding your 3 issues that you've chosen. And you need to also make clear that you're comparing to these 2 time periods, 1963 and today. And I mean, that's a tall order, but that's why I suggested in this case you use a 2-sentence thesis statement. You know, just make, when you state your position, make clear that you say something like, based on the evidence in the essays by Baldwin and Alexander, and then state your position, and then somehow work in your 3 issues, and that you're comparing these 2 time periods. I think you can do it. It's I know it sounds like a lot, but I think and some of you did, or were close to doing that, you know. So all right. So and also a couple of you, oh, I mentioned, I think I mentioned this in the past too, that sometimes when we write, as we get to the end of writing a draft, our ideas change. And I found it, a couple of you anyway, when you got to the conclusion, you seem to be arguing something different than you said in the introduction. So you need to clean that up. If you need to reformulate, restate your thesis in the introduction, that's fine. That's why we write drafts, you know. So please do that. Right? And I think that's all I want to say about thesis statements. So you want to state your position. You want to make sure that the reader knows you're basing your position on on evidence in the Baldwin and Alexander essays about your 3 issues, and that you're comparing 1963 and today. All right. State that 2 sentences I think will work best, and state that near the end of your opening paragraph. A couple of you put your position at the beginning of the paragraph, which you probably should say that for the end of the paragraph. Well, like when you're writing papers for professors in your future academic careers, they're generally going to expect your thesis statement to be at the end of the first paragraph. So unless it's a long paper, you know, like 15, 20-page paper, then you might use 2 or 3 paragraphs for an introduction. But in general, they will expect your thesis at the end of your first paragraph. So okay, what else? Present tense. When you're writing about a text, use present tense. Baldwin writes. Alexander states. Alexander contends. Baldwin recalls. Okay, always present tense. There will be cases where if you're writing about, okay, say you're writing about one thing, and then you need to talk about something that happened before that one thing. Then when you're writing about this, you would use past tense, right? But otherwise, so that's the one I think I was going to try to explain this in Zoom class the other day. Now I'm doing it. So you want to use present tense almost exclusively. There will be a few occasions where you'll be talking about something that occurred before something else, and I think you'll know when that happens. And then you would briefly go into past tense. All right. You like my visual aids there? Okay. When you are, let me check my time. Maybe I still go. And several of you, every time you introduce, we need to talk about introducing quotes, because several of you, when you introduce your quotes, you know, how will I phrase this? You told the reader that you're going to be using Baldwin's talk to teachers, and Alexander's Travelin generation. You said that usually in your introduction. Then every time you introduced a quote, you would say, in James Baldwin's The Talk to Teachers, James Baldwin's essay, The Talk to Teachers, or in Elizabeth Alexander's Travelin generation. Every time you introduce a quote, you gave all that information again, and that's really not necessary. Once you establish that those are your sources, then you're going to say, Baldwin writes, Alexander states, you know what, let's share a screen here. While we were talking about, yes, we have a couple of handouts. Remember, there's a lot of stuff under course documents here for you to use, all right? There were a couple of things that I put on here. Actually, this quote sandwich handout is good. It has a lot of the, I showed you this on Thursday. It's got all these marker verbs here. So, Alexander acknowledges. Baldwin agrees. Yeah, because and okay, here's another thing about introducing quotes. Some of you just drop the quotes in. You had a quote from Alexander Baldwin. You just open quote and wrote and then wrote the direct quote without introducing the quote. You need to introduce the quote in some way. There's several ways to do it, and so Alexander acknowledges, Baldwin writes, Alexander admits. So all right, use verbs like this, and as you notice, they're all present tense. Right? There are cases, and when you use a marker verb like this, you use a comma. All right, you would go, and I think it probably says, yeah, it's right here. Malcolm X writes, comma, open quote, comma, space, open quote, and then your direct quote. All right. You can also work a quote directly into your text like this, and that'll generally begin with a that. Dwight Bollinger notes that, and then there's a third case where you would use a colon. All right. I don't know if they I guess they don't indicate that here. You would, and look at my comments on your marked drafts, because I noted where I thought a colon would be the best way to introduce your quotes. So, oh, and there's one other handout on here for introducing quotes. It's getting a little low on time here. Right here. This is from the, I showed you this a while ago. This is from the writer's reference, okay? A lot of examples here, you know, these are basically the same verbs that, what they call marker verbs in quote sandwich. Let me stop the share. We're getting a little low on time. So let me just go over any other important issues here from my notes. Avoid broad, general, vague statements, and also avoid subjective language like terrible, beautiful, lovely. I'm making these are probably not the best examples, but avoid subjective language like that. And more, I think more, and from after reading the drafts, more importantly, avoid broad, general, vague statements that are not based on the evidence that you are using for your essay, right? And again, I made notes on this in the comments on your drafts. Let's see. You should use transitional phrases. We're just about out of time. So again, check out all these documents under course documents. I also have a handout here on transitional phrases. Where is it? Transitions. All right. Transitions is again from writer's reference. You can check this out. Transitions from one paragraph to the next, from one sentence to the next is important. Okay. Oh, and just go quickly, I'm going to run a little over here. If you introduce the quote with the author's name, you don't need to put the author's name in parentheses after the quote. And also, in our case here, these versions of the essays that we're using are from online sources. So there really are no page numbers. I know there are page numbers on the PDF, but those are generated by my web browser. They have no relation to what is actually on the website, right? So, so in this case, you don't need to use page numbers either. So generally, the best way for this essay, you really don't need to even bother with parenthetical citations, because you should be introducing your quotes with Baldwin writes, Alexander asserts, and once you do that, you know, and since there are only 2 sources that are going to be listed on your works cited list, which we will finish working on Thursday, the reader will know what you are quoting and citing. Okay, I've gone over. Finish reading the Anya for Tuesday. There will be a discussion board this week, and annotations, of course. Please, and also, some of you have not turned in the first drafts yet. Quite a few of you, actually. Less than half, but quite a few. They're not turned in the drafts yet. And I know you're busy. I know it's a busy time of year, but please get them in soon so I can give you some help with this essay, because the final version of this essay, which is due on November 7th, is worth it's 75% of the argumentative essay is 15% of your grade for the semester in this course, 15%. Okay, and the revision is worth 75% of that, so it's like 11.25% of your. So that final revision you're turning in on the 7th is worth 11.25% of your final grade. Think about that. That's more than a whole letter grade. So the first draft and also this reverse outline exercise are designed to help you with that revision. So please get these assignments done. I know it's busy. I know it's tough. I tried to work with you on this, but we got to keep moving here. We got to get through this, and we got to do compare contrast, and you got to do a final. So welcome to college. What can I say? I didn't invent it. Okay. So any questions, please email me, come to office hours. I'm always glad to help, and I'll see you on Thursday. Bye-bye.